Hello, I am Jake from the ADAS Lab at Seoul National University. Today is the final week's last session of the Mastering Diffusion seminar, and I will present about Introduction to Token Ordering. This talk deals with how generative models order the output tokens, which has recently been addressed in some papers. Since there are not many related studies or resources, I will also include my personal thoughts in this presentation. Today's talk can be divided into three main parts. First, what is the token ordering? I will discuss the historical flow of LLMs and raise some questions, particularly whether the current token generation methods we use for downstream tasks are truly optimal. Second, I will present some seminal works related to the token ordering, including Sigma GPT and Encoder GPT. Finally, I will summarize this lecture and propose some discussion points to think about together before concluding. So what exactly is token ordering? The autoregressive models we know are formalized as follows. This is the formula, very familiar. AR models model data by predicting the next token based on the previous context. In particular, recent AI models mainly adopt the method of laying out tokens sequentially from left to right. For example, GPT-2 on the right decodes one word at a time and conditions the next token on the generated token. This whole process is done via left to right token ordering, which can be described as a left to right ordering. We can now think about the following. Modern LLMs order tokens from left to right. This is similar to how we had to the inductive bias into CNNs for image processing. Here it is an inductive bias built into the language model. But why have we come to regard this left to right token ordering as the norm or something obvious? In fact, there is a historical background to this. The LLMs we use today, particularly those based on the transformer architecture, emerged from a long historical flow from Claude Shannon's early work in the mid-1900s on natural language processing, proposing left-to-right processing method through n-gram models, RNNs, and LSTMs all the way to the transformers. The important point is that all of this history was centered on natural language. For natural language, generating tokens left to right feels natural, as that is how we read and write. But based on this, I think modern LLMs are no longer just models for NLP. For example, today's LLMs can perform tasks such as codings, solving complex or logical puzzles, or solving and proving mathematical problems. These are subtasks that go beyond just processing natural language. Based on this, when we want to generate a random sequence, always generating it from left to right, that is, carrying out tokens ordering strictly left to right, may not always be optimal. For example, in coding, we might first write the definition of a function and only afterward fill in the contents inside each function. This is clearly quite different from how current LLMs generate all codes left to right. Second, suppose we are writing a long mathematical proof or scientific discovery. In that case, we may not generate tokens that is in the sequence strictly from left to right. Speaking from personal experience, when I prove mathematical theorems, I do not necessarily proceed from the beginning to the end, but rather go back and forth. And I believe many people do not prove mathematics strictly left to right either. Also, when solving puzzles like Sudoku, we never fill in the blanks strictly left to right in order. So now we can think of token generation as an ordering problem. For coding, we could order tokens defining functions first. For Sudoku, we could order the crucial numbers first that are key to solving the whole puzzle. This ordering problem is deeply related to combinatorial optimization and group theory. For example, problems like the traveling salesman problem or the four-color theorem. When solving such problems, three concepts are always needed: permutation, symmetric group, and permutation group. A permutation is a bijection that reorders the elements of a set, and a symmetric group is the group whose elements are all permutation of a finite set. So the cardinality of a symmetric group is always n factorial. Finally, subgroups of symmetric groups are called permutation group. Famous elements belonging to permutation groups include identity permutation, rotation permutation. In this seminar, the important element is the identity permutation, which for any sequence returns the sequence in the same order. So left-right autoregressive models solve only the identity permutation factorization. If we express this using a permutation function pi, it looks like this. Therefore, when we use modern LLMs to write the sentence, the model generates left-right following the order of the identity permutation. Theoretically, any other prediction, that is using any elements of the symmetric group for permutation, should result in the same joint probability distribution. For example, with the same sentence, I love omnimodal diffusion foundation model, even if we predict omni first, then diffusion, the joint distribution remains guaranteed to be the same. Naturally, papers have attempted this idea. The most representative is the paper called Sigma GPT. In this work, permutations are randomly sampled and two types of positional encodings are injected into the model during training. The first one is token positional encoding, the position of the token in the permuted order. The second one is target positional encoding, which is the position of the token in the final sequence. So for example, token xt may be the second generated token due to permutation, but in the final sequence it takes the very last position. Sigma GPT uses two kinds of sampling during the generation process: rejection sampling and burst sampling. Let's look at an example. Given the context I love omni, first through one-forward paths, we obtain a candidate set. Since the model is trained in any order, these candidate tokens may appear in quiet random order. Based on this, we sample n random permutations to form sentences and then perform rejection sampling on them. Looking more closely for cases like this, candidate sentences are generated and then acceptance or rejection is decided based on the following formula. Here, U is a randomly sampled scalar value. If the right-hand side of the formula is greater than U, then we accept the token. P is the confidence given only the context, whereas Q is the confidence given the context plus the tokens are already generated. For example, let's say U is equals to 0.8, and suppose the confidence values for each tokens in the candidate are as follows. If the probabilities of the first candidate sentence generated by permutation are like this, we calculate accordingly. For example, the ratio Q over P for the first token is 1/4, which is smaller than 0.8. It is rejected. If rejected, we move on to the next sentence and apply the same procedure. This process is repeated for all sequences until all our tokens are accepted through rejection sampling. If none of the n permutations yield a fully accepted sentence, we take the sentence with the most accepted tokens, feed it back as context and repeat prediction for the remaining tokens. As a result, a final sentence like this is produced. One important point to note that is even though candidates are generated in a single pass, during the rejection sampling process, we must still generate tokens in a autoregressive manner, one at a time in order. This is why the name GPT is attached to the model. Looking at the result of this paper, the table above shows the performance and the table below shows the training requirements. It indicates how many steps and epochs are needed for an any-order GPT to reach the same performance as a left-right GPT. The key point is that any other GPT requires significantly more training than left-right models to achieve equivalent performance. We will revisit this point in the discussion section. Another interesting point is when the model is not trained from the start with pure any order, but instead with curriculum learning that is training the first K% in left to right order, performance improves. Now I will introduce the second paper, any order GPT as masked diffusion model. This work points out that current comparisons between AR models and MDMs are unfair. The reason is AR models are usually decoder-based with cultural attention, whereas MDMs are usually encoder-based with full attention. Therefore, this paper proposed MDM plus casual attention for a fair comparison with AR. Here, the MDM ultimately becomes equivalent to an any other AR expressed in formular form. This paper analyzes the advantages of decoder-based models as follows. First, training efficiency. They argue decoder-only models achieve higher signal density by using almost all tokens for prediction, while encoder-only MDMs use fewer tokens per example. The second one is density estimation efficiency. Decoder-only AR has order of complexity O of n squared. Encoder-only models require n evaluations, so order of n cubed, or O of t times n squared in the case of Monte Carlo sampling. Finally, regarding generation efficiency, decoder-only models require O of n squared times with KV caching. Encoder-only MDMs require t steps for each O of n squared, leading to a total of O of t times n squared of comparable to O n cubed. This is indeed correct. The paper uses different big O notation, but I slightly modified it for consistency with our previous seminars. The key conclusion is decoder-based models are more efficient in training, density estimation, and generation. The paper further shows through mathematics that the loss of MDMs equals the loss of any other AR. Thus, if MDMs and ARM share the same architecture, the only difference is token ordering. Much of the paper's analysis builds on Sigma GPT, so we can understand Sigma GPT as an implementation of a decoder-based MDM. So the first finding of this paper is that any other GPT converges significantly slower in the initial training stages compared to standard GPT when both use the same architecture. This was also shown earlier in Sigma GPT, and fundamentally it indicates that any other training solves a harder problem than left-right. The authors speculate on two causes of this phenomenon. Learning representation effective across n vectorial permutation is demanding, and many permutations may be uninformative. The second important finding is that the standard left-to-right order converges much faster than an arbitrary, randomly selected fixed order from S. Since this experiment was conducted on text NLP data, at least for training with text, left-to-right order is more efficient. In my personal opinion, depending on the task coding math, there could exist different optimal token orderings. The last finding I would like to introduce is that encoder-only MDMs model n times 2 to the power of n minus 1 order invariant univariate conditional probabilities, while decoder-only any order AR models approximately e times n factorial order dependent univariate conditional probabilities. In short, the decoder-only models explore much larger probability space. This implies that training decoder-only models may be more difficult. However, as also presented in the ADAS seminar, any order training, which has this difficult property, can in fact show better performance or efficiency than identity permutation. Recalling the seminar on understanding token ordering in mask diffusions, the paper proposed what they called the LNO distribution. It argues that in every sequence there exist latent tokens, the cause, and observation tokens, the effects. Although this concept is abstract, we can think of examples. In coding, the function definition can be a latent token, and the content inside the function can be the observation token. In Stoku, the critical numbers needed to solve the puzzles are latent tokens, while the other cells then become easy ones. Those are known are observation tokens. Thus, of course, another sequence have cause tokens positioned on the left and effect tokens on the right. The lesson of the paper, encoder-based MDMs can order multiple tokens simultaneously. This means they can generate multiple cause tokens at once, which can be beneficial for key token ordering and for speeding up sampling. But indeed, encoder-based models inevitably come with trade-offs, such as requiring more time steps. Alright, let me wrap things up. So far, what we've seen is this. Left-right ordering is not something we must stick to. We can also generate in any order. To put it simply, left-right ordering is not mandatory, and any order generation is totally possible. The second one is mask diffusion models, or MDMs, are basically equivalent to any other AR, and we get to choose the architecture, encoder or decoder. Encoders can predict multiple tokens in parallel, and they allow iterative refinement, but they need more work if we want KV caching. Decoders cover a broader probability space. They naturally support in KV caching, and they generate one token at a time, step by step. So here's another important point. Any other AR is just tougher than left-right AR. It's like training for the worst case scenario. But if you start with some left-right training, what we call curriculum learning, you can make it converge much better. And if we compare left-right AR, is the easiest. Encoder-based any other AR is in the middle, and decoder-based any other AR is the hardest. My key thoughts are this. Different sequence might actually have different best orderings. So maybe for some task, the left-right bias isn't optimal either. And that means MDMs could have more potential because they can adapt to many different ordering schemes. So what's next? It's time for us to really exploit this. How much performance potential do MDMs actually have? Can they make use of this broad exploration space even if it seems inefficient? And here's another question. For each task, what are the fundamental cost tokens? If we order those first, maybe we get better performance and faster generation. And finally, can models actually learn the best ordering by themselves? Up to now, we've only tried random orderings or confidence-based orderings, but maybe there's an optimal ordering that the model can discover. So what should researchers like us do? Well, first we need to balance efficiency and expressivity. Maybe curriculum learning is the way to handle that trade-off. Second, we should explore meta-learning strategies for ordering. Since MDMs are already trained to handle any order, maybe reinforcement learning or some other method could help us actually discover the best ordering strategies across different sequences. And this could even help us to trace how the model reasons step by step. Third, we really need effective KV caching for encoder and the MDMs, because if we can order multiple tokens at once efficiently, that could be a huge benefit. This is something our diffusion team is planning to explore soon. And lastly, we shouldn't stop at text. Beyond text, there should also be cost tokens in images, in video, even in protein generation. Exploring token ordering in those modalities could be really exciting. So that's it. That's the end of our diffusion seminar series. Since this was the last one, I wanted to share some forward-looking visionary ideas with you. I hope this gave you a lot of food for thought. That wraps up our last diffusion seminar. Thanks everyone for sticking with it until the end. I'm Jay Kim. Thank you very much.